Hello and welcome back to another research recap. My name is Lisa. I'm your host. I'm the owner and head coach at Nutrition Coaching and Life, where we help people lose body fat, gain muscle, improve their body composition, and their relationship with food. In today's research recap, I'm going to talk about protein. I hope that you've had a great start to the year already. Those of you who participated in our 7-day New Year's Kickstarter, Drop the Stress, Drop the Pounds. I hope that that was a really great way for you to get closer to your body composition goals and just general weight goals for 2025. Apart from that, if you're listening and you enjoy these research recaps, please subscribe to the show. I try to drop one of those every couple of weeks at least, or maybe even every week. And on top of that, we have our podcast coming out twice a week, and also check out our YouTube for more free content. But let's dive right into it. And the topic for today is there a limit to how much muscle mass can be gained from a high protein diet? The actual study that was reviewed, and this is a part of Body by Science, which is a research review that I absolutely love. It is my favorite research review out there. I also love Alan Aragon's research review, Mass Research Review, Reps, but this is truly my favorite. Bill Campbell and his team do such a great job in summarizing some wonderful, very new and old relevant studies. So the study that they reviewed here was titled The Effects of 16 Weeks of Two Different High-Protein Diets with Either Resistance Training or Concurrent Training on Body Composition, Muscular Strength and Performance, and Markers of Liver and Kidney Function in Resistance-Trained Males. This was a study done by Bagheri et al. In 2023, so reasonably recent. And the background information for this study is the following. Oftentimes, people think more protein is always better, but is there a limit to how much protein we can consume each day to build more muscle? That's where the current debate is on this topic. I don't think a lot of people would argue that relatively higher daily protein intakes are effective for maximizing muscle mass in conjunction with resistance training. We have too much data reporting that higher protein intakes are superior. For example, higher protein intakes have been shown to significantly increase mass in resistance-trained females and undertrained older males, healthy young men, middle-aged women, and older women who are dieting. If you want links to all these studies, you can find them in the research review. Just go to billcampbell.com, I believe is the name of the website where you can subscribe to the research review. It's only like $7.99 per month. So truly, I really recommend it. In each of these studies that I just mentioned, more protein was better than low protein. But can we keep increasing protein intakes along with resistance training and expect to gain more and more muscle mass? Well, we don't think so, or at least Bill doesn't think so. I believe that there is an upper limit to the amount of protein that can be consumed each day and its ability to increase a meaningful amount of muscle mass. The way that he conceptualizes this is that once a threshold of protein intake has been reached, consuming more and more protein above the threshold produces less and less of an anabolic effect. This is clearly demonstrated in the research with respect to increasing the amount of protein in a single meal and its effect on elevating muscle protein synthesis. As the amount of protein ingested increases in a single meal, there is a small net increase in muscle protein synthesis. But less and less of an increase in muscle protein synthesis is observed with increasing protein intake. For example, increasing protein from 10 to 20 grams in a meal has a large effect on increasing muscle protein synthesis. But going from 30 to 40 grams, while there is an increase in muscle protein synthesis, it is not as much of an increase from 10. It is not as much as the increase from 10 to 20 grams. Consuming 60 grams of protein in a single feeding compared to 40, even less of an increase in the muscle protein synthesis response. In fact, it likely becomes difficult to detect additional muscle protein synthesis increases at this level since they are marginal. Let me see. Yes, here we go. So that's kind of a little bit of an example. His protein intake recommendations for optimizing one's physique are 0.75 to 1 grams of protein per pound of ideal or goal body weight, or that translates into 1.6 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of ideal or goal body weight. For example, if a female weighs 152 pounds, so about 69 kilos, she would aim to consume approximately 150 to 150 grams of protein each day. A male weighing 183 pounds, so about 83 kilos, would aim to consume approximately 135 to 185 grams of protein each day. The lower threshold of this amount is likely enough to maximize muscle hypertrophy. If this is the case, why increase the range up to 1 gram per pound, so 2.2 grams that he recommended? Well, he advocates for a higher range of protein intakes for several reasons. Number one, a higher protein goal serves as an insurance policy. If you fail to consume 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, so 2.2 grams per kg, you'll likely get close to this and still consume enough protein to maximize muscle hypertrophy. Number two, some research supports that higher protein intakes causes a significant loss of body fat. While body fat is not muscle mass, it is the other body tissue that impacts one's physique, health, and performance. And number three, older individuals can experience anabolic resistance, so that's a reduced ability of muscle tissue to respond to protein intake. Not surprisingly, this can lead to a loss of muscle mass and strength, increasing the risk of injury and illness. If middle-aged and older people are consuming the upper range of his protein intake recommendation, so 1 gram per pound or 2.2 grams per kg of goal body weight, they are getting enough protein to offset anabolic resistance. The study that we're reviewing in this issue is a great practical study for two reasons. First, the researchers are comparing a very high protein intake, so 1.5 grams per pound or 3.2 grams per kg, versus a moderate protein intake, so 0.75 grams per pound, so 1.6 grams per kg, in resistance-trained males. Second, the researchers included two groups of subjects, a resistance training only group and a concurrent training group, so conducted resistance training and aerobic exercise. This was a great feature of this study since many fitness enthusiasts engage in other types of training in addition to resistance training. Now, let's look at who was in this study. We had 44 resistance-trained males between the ages of 18 and 36. The average age was 26. And the subjects had to be healthy, free from musculoskeletal disorders to qualify for the study. In addition, they had to have at least 1 year of resistance training experience, so training 3 to 4 times per week, sleeping at least 7 to 8 hours during the 24-hour day, not taking any steroids or any illegal agents known to increase muscle size, and they had to be consuming less than 0.75 grams of protein per pound of body weight, so 1.6 grams per kg. At the start of the study, the subjects had these characteristics. So on average, 26 and a half years old. They were 5 feet 11 inches on average tall. They weighed 183 pounds and they had a body fat percentage of 21%. What did the researchers do? The researchers split the subjects into 4 total groups. A training group. Give me 1 second. Into 4 total groups, 2 training groups with 2 different protein intakes, a moderate intake versus a high protein intake. The 4 groups in the study were resistance training only with moderate protein, resistance training only with high protein, concurrent training with moderate protein, and concurrent training with high protein. Each group of subjects followed their assigned workouts and prescribed protein intakes for 16 weeks. The resistance training details of the study. Subjects in the 2 resistance training groups performed 4 sessions per week, 2 upper body and 2 lower body workouts. The upper body workout included 7 exercises: chest press, lateral pull down, standing barbell shoulder press, standing shoulder shrugs, biceps curl, triceps press down, and ab crunch. And the lower body workout included 6 exercises: 45-degree leg press, back squats, seated leg curl, barbell hip thrust, back extension, and calf raises. The resistance training program was designed as a linear progressive program where the intensity or load of each exercise was increased during the 16-week study intervention. An overview of the linear progressive program was as follows. So in the week 1 to 4, they did 3 sets of 12 reps with about 75% of the 1 rep max. Then week 5 to 8, they did 3 sets of 10 reps at about 80% of the 1 rep max. And then weeks 9 to 12, they did 4 sets of 8 reps at 85% of the 1 rep max. And then weeks 13 to 16, they did 4 sets of 6 reps at about 90% of the 1 rep max. The rest intervals between exercises and sets lasted up to 2 minutes, and research assistants supervised all workouts throughout the study, which in my opinion is a very big strength. Now, in the concurrent training arm, the subjects had also performed 4 exercise sessions per week. The participants undertook the same resistance training program as described above, but after each resistance training workout, the subjects then completed an endurance training workout. The endurance training workouts were completed on a cycle ergometer and consisted of the following intensities. They did hill simulation rides of varying intensity, so some were between 25 and 110% of aerobic power. They did moderate intensity continuous training at about 50% aerobic power, and they did moderate intensity interval training at about 70% of aerobic power, and high intensity interval training at about 100% aerobic power. Here a little side note, so important concurrent training study design considerations that Bill notes. The way the researchers decided to design their concurrent training study is important. Whenever you read a concurrent training versus resistance training only study, you have to ask yourself if both groups did the same total amount of exercise, or if the concurrent training group did more total exercise than the resistance training group only, which is often the case, as here, for example. To elaborate, let's use exercise time as an example. This is the easiest to conceptualize. Let's say that the resistance training only group's resistance training workout lasts 16 minutes per day, and they train 4 days per week. This is a total amount of 4 hours per week. How do you structure the workouts for the concurrent training group? You have 2 options. You have them do the same resistance training workout as the resistance training only group, and then add in additional cardio, as it was the case here. For example, the concurrent training group would perform 60 minutes of resistance training workouts per week and an additional 4 60-minute cardio sessions per week. If this is how the study is designed, they are doing twice as much total exercise by time as the resistance training only group, logically. The other option would be to have them do half of the amount of resistance training as the resistance training only group, and then fill in the other half with cardio. If this were the plan, the concurrent training group would perform 30 minutes of resistance training workouts and an additional 4 30-minute cardio sessions per week. If this is how the study is designed, they do the same amount of exercise as the resistance only group. As we analyze and interpret concurrent training studies, we must pay attention to the details of the study design. While there is likely not much of an impact on muscle mass if one group does twice as much physical activity as the other group, we expect significant differences in reduction in body fat that favor the group doing twice as much physical activity. That's kind of logical. So in the current study, we must recognize that while the 2 groups are performing the same amount of resistance training, the concurrent training group is doing a lot of additional endurance training, which would lead me to believe that this group would likely lose more body fat compared to the resistance training only group. However, the primary purpose of the study was to see what happens to muscle mass. Body fat changes were a secondary variable of interest. I actually skipped too quickly to this slide, but let's go into the nutrition details. The primary objective of the study was to compare a moderate protein intake, so 0.75 grams per pound or 1.6 grams per kg, to a high protein intake, so 1.5 grams per pound or 3.2 grams per kg across both the resistance training only subjects and the concurrent training subjects. Macronutrient composition was supervised during the study, with the investigators very focused on total calorie intake and daily protein intake. The subjects met with accredited dietitians every 2 weeks, where they were provided with guidelines to reach protein and energy needs, including the distribution of protein intake throughout the day across 4 to 7 meals, with 20 to 40 grams of protein per meal to maximize muscle protein synthesis. The subjects were asked to remain in a positive energy balance to maintain anabolic adaptations. So to help the subjects achieve their targeted protein intake, they consumed 40 grams of isolated whey protein after every training session, and other remaining protein quantities were consumed with whole foods, and habitual dietary protein intake remained stable throughout the intervention for all groups. So what physique-related outcome variables were measured? Body composition was measured via DEXA at the beginning of the study and 2 weeks after the last week of training. Waiting for the final body composition measurement for 2 weeks is a great idea because, where are we here? So in addition to the body composition data, the researchers assessed maximal strength, muscular power, and aerobic capacity. So what were the main results? Again, the main purpose of the study, as we look at the results of the study, remember that the primary purpose of this was to determine if a moderate amount of protein was as good as a very high protein intake for muscle hypertrophy. Previous research suggests that the moderate amount of protein used in this study is enough to maximize muscle hypertrophy, but no study up to this point has tested the theory with concurrent training. So let's look at the nutrition intakes. Whenever we have a nutrition intervention in a study, one of the first things we need to do before analyzing any of the results of the study is to make sure the subjects consumed what was prescribed to them relative to nutrition intakes. Did the subjects follow the nutrition instructions of the researchers? In this study, it was important that the moderate protein groups consumed moderate amounts of protein and the high protein groups consumed high amount of protein. Logic. Total calorie intake increased only in the high protein groups. The resistance training only high protein group increased their calorie intake by about 19% during the study, and the concurrent training high protein group increased their calorie intake by about 22% during the study. The increase in caloric intakes in these two groups was solely due to the increased protein intake, as carbohydrates and fats did not significantly change from baseline in any of the 4 groups. And we can look at this table here. Oh no, I didn't include it. I don't think so. Anyway, go check out the study if you're interested in the table. Refer to the nutrition summary table for the macronutrient intakes for each group during the study. So now let's look at the body composition outcomes. All subjects combined, when all 4 groups were analyzed together, gained a significant amount of muscle mass. On average, about 4.7 pounds, so 2.1 kilos of lean mass was gained over the 16-week intervention. That is amazing. While the higher protein intakes for both the resistance training only group and the concurrent training group caused more muscle gains compared to the moderate protein intakes, it did not reach the level of statistical significance. The researchers made this statement about their findings. Post-intervention gains in lean mass were similar between concurrent training and resistance training only groups, regardless of protein intake. The individual group data is very interesting. That reminds Bill of what he stated above about increasing protein intake on a per meal basis. On a per meal basis, muscle protein synthesis levels continue to increase as you increase protein intake from low to optimal amounts. However, once you reach a certain threshold, going above optimal protein intakes, the more and more protein ingested results in less and less of a muscle protein synthesis benefit. This study supports this concept from an absolute muscle mass perspective, not just a cellular marker of anabolism that muscle protein synthesis measures gives us. In this study, when subjects consumed protein above and beyond the 0.75 grams per pound or 1.6 grams per kg level, there were additional gains in muscle mass. However, these additional gains did not reach the threshold for statistical significance. The way the researchers reported body fat losses was kind of frustrating. When all the subjects were combined, when all 4 groups were analyzed together, there was a global decrease in body fat percentage. However, only one group, the concurrent training group, consuming moderate protein, 0.75 grams per pound, lost a significant body fat amount during the study. The researchers did not provide quantitative values for how much body fat was lost in each group, unfortunately. This was quite frustrating. Bill has included the exact figures that were published in the study so we can see the data for ourselves. I did include that in the presentation. As we can see here, the only group that lost a significant amount of body fat was the concurrent training group, consuming 0.75 grams of protein per pound of body weight. This is not surprising, since this group engaged in additional endurance training that both the resistance training only groups did not engage in. It is surprising that the higher protein concurrent training group did not lose a significant amount of body fat as well, since they performed the same amount of extra aerobic exercise. But here is something that will surprise many people. The resistance training only and concurrent training high protein groups consumed significantly more calories during the study compared to the moderate protein groups, but did not gain any additional body fat. How can this be? Well, normally it is true that eating more calories leads to an increase in body fat, but something we have discovered over the years is that when excess calories come from protein alone, the subjects come from calories alone, and the subjects are engaged in resistance training, the excess calories from protein are not converted to body fat. I'll say that again. Something we have learned over the years is that if we consume extra calories from protein alone and pair that with resistance training, the excess calories from protein are not converted to body fat. Here were the estimated average daily intakes of the subjects during the 16 weeks of training. The resistance training only moderate protein group consumed an average of 2,500 calories. The resistance training only high protein group consumed 2,860 calories, so 360 more calories than the resistance only training group, but their weight did not change. The concurrent training moderate protein group consumed 2,520 calories, and the concurrent training high protein group consumed 2,880 calories, so 360 more calories than the concurrent training moderate protein group. Other outcome measures, regardless of their assigned group, all subjects significantly increased maximal strength in the leg and chest press. However, there was no significant difference between the 4 groups concerning how much maximal strength was gained. Similar outcomes were observed for relative muscular power, and muscular power was assessed by having the subjects perform cycle ergometry with an added resistance of 7.5% of their body mass. To assess lower body power output, the subjects cycled on the ergometer, how do you say that word, as hard and fast as they could for 30 seconds against a 7.5% body weight resistance. If the subjects weighed 200 pounds, then the resistance applied to the wheel of the ergometer was 15 pounds. So to assess upper body power workout, the subjects used their hands and cranked as hard and fast as they could for 30 seconds against also a 7.5% body weight resistance. At the end of the study, all subjects significantly increased both upper and lower body output. However, there were no statistical differences between the 4 groups concerning improvements in power production. Not surprisingly, aerobic capacity only increased in the two concurrent training groups. Makes sense. Aerobic capacity measures one's cardio and aerobic fitness levels and is also known as VO2 max. The concurrent training groups were the only groups to perform cardio in the study, and therefore these would be the only groups in which we would expect to observe improvements in aerobic capacity. The concurrent training group, consuming a moderate amount of protein, improved their aerobic capacity by 28%, and the concurrent training groups consuming a high protein improved aerobic capacity by 20%. Now, looking at some of the strengths and limitations of the study, a strength would be that they used a DEXA and also the timing of it. So the DEXA assessment conducted at the end of the study took place 2 weeks after the final week of training. This is good practice because the DEXA results indicate actual change in lean mass. If body composition tests are conducted too close to the last workout, there is a greater likelihood that body water shifts can influence the results due to exercise-induced edema and inflammation. Another strength were that the workouts were supervised, and a study limitation was that they poorly reported the body fat and that they did not have a low protein group. Now, a question that he poses here is, what are my general recommendations, or yours if you're a coach, for your clients? If you're a coach, or just in general, if you are mindful of your own protein intake, please comment below. I'd love to hear. My recommendation is very much aligned with this, and that I just keep it quote unquote simple and let people usually aim for about 1 gram per pound of goal body weight. I think it just keeps things nice and tidy. As he says, it's also a sort of a security blanket, because most people sometimes are a little bit below their goal, and therefore we also don't need to pay quite as much attention to protein quality or quite as much attention to protein timing. And it's just kind of safer, I guess I would say, especially then also after reading things that demonstrate that if we have a higher protein intake, the extra protein is not stored as body fat anyway. The other question he poses is, do you recommend a particular daily protein intake goal? Does this change during a dieting phase? And do you suggest a certain number of protein feedings per day? So as I said, 1 gram per pound roughly. It doesn't change during a dieting phase. If anything, I might, like if someone is really, really hungry and we have to drop their calories again or so, I might just attribute more to protein, so increase the protein actually, also to help offset muscle mass loss even more, and decrease some of the other 2 macros. But generally speaking, it actually always just stays the same. Again, keeping things simple and staying in line with the research, helping the body to maintain and build lean body mass. Do I suggest a certain number of protein feedings per day? Well, not specifically, but practically it usually turns into 3 to 5, just so people actually hit their numbers. Let's just say if someone just wants to eat 1 meal per day, it's going to be quite hard to fit 150 grams of protein into 1 meal and digesting that well. And also we want to make sure that we're training in a fed state. So meaning we have to have at least 2 meals, one before and one after the training. But even 75 grams of protein, to stick with this example, is quite a lot in 2 meals. And so practically speaking, for most people, it's going to be at least 3 meals. Most people actually, an extra shakes here and there, or Greek yogurt as a snack or so. So I would say somewhere between 3 to 5. That is also, though, because we mostly work with women or smaller individuals, and no one who's above 200 pounds or so. In that case, I could imagine that we would go up to 6 or even 8. But yeah, that is my response. Again, I would love to hear your response. And once more, I cannot recommend this research review highly enough. I truly, truly love it. I think he does such a great job. It comes out once per month, reviewing 2 studies. One more time, please subscribe, follow us on Instagram as well. Sign up to our newsletter, however you enjoy consuming content. I'm ever so grateful for you listening in and following along, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.